Hello again, friends, and welcome to another segment here on Doc G's Wine and Spirits Review. As this is the last day of February, I realized that I had not shared with you the wine of the month for February, meaning the grape of the month. If you remember, in January, I started out by sharing with you a lot of details, and we chatted about the Riesling grape. So I'm going to try to alternate each month and go from white to red, so that we'll cover 6 of them each by the end of 2025. So today I'd like to feature, you notice there are a lot of friends here on the table, and there's a good reason for that, as I'm going to introduce this wine to you. But welcome to the last day of February. We're ready to roll over. Tomorrow is March 1st, which is, if you're into this, the meteorological beginning of spring. And it feels a little spring-like the last couple days, so we'll have a nice chat here about this wine. So let me pour it, say cheers, and we'll begin. And you notice it does come in a rosé. Fantastic. So welcome to our chat about the grape called Grenache. So one of the reasons that I decided to pick the Grenache grape was that it's grown all over the planet. Riesling, you couldn't say the same thing, and not all grapes are like that. But Grenache is prevalent in every wine region around the world. Some places more than others, which I'll point out to you in a minute. So what I'd like to do today, keep this short and simple, even though there's a lot of bottles here on the table. I'll run through each one of them very quickly, I promise. I'm not going to drink all of those. I'm going to sip 2 of them for a very specific reason. Let me start off. I want to talk about some notable facts. We'll talk about the pairing of it with different foods, its flavor profile, some serving notes, and different styles that the wine comes in. And then we'll roll over into March. So with that said, let me take another sip. I'm not going to start with the rosé. Let's just talk about the wine in general. So one of the reasons that I have so many bottles here on the table is Grenache is the top, within the top 5. I didn't even check for sure, but it might be the 2nd or 3rd most grown grape on the planet. So that's something to reckon with. Its other names, you'll see it as Garnacha, which comes from Spain. And if you ever go into an Italian restaurant and you see the word Cannonau, Cannonaou, I think is the spelling, that's from Sardinia. It's Italian. It's Grenache. So wine grapes often take on a lot of different names. So the wine itself, the grape Grenache, according to wine experts and wine historians, traces back to Spain in the area of Aragon, which is, if you're familiar with the map of Spain, the kind of the northern region of Spain. And it is very, very prevalent throughout Spain, but the traces of it, the origin of it, goes back to Aragon. It is now prominent. It has made its way to the Loire. It's made its way around the world, but places where it's prominent are in the Loire, in the Rhone Valley in France. And I'm going to talk about that as I'll take you through the wine through each of these bottles. And it's all over Spain. It's just all over. And California and Australia are 2 other hot spots where there is a lot of Grenache. I have a lot of California Grenache here on the table. The flavor profile of the red version is black and red fruit when it's younger. As it gets older, you'll get some leather, some herbs. You'll get a little that blood orange flavor as opposed to just orange, which is that deep orange flavor. Strawberry, plum, any black fruit. Everybody's palate's different, but that's what the experts say about Grenache. And the Grenaches that I have had certainly attest to that, especially as you get one that's a little more aged, and that's the one I have here. It starts to get a little bit more leather on it, which is a good quality in wine. You might think it's not so good, but in a red wine, that's a really fantastic quality, and it shows that it's hit its peak of aging. So in terms of the serving notes, and not counting the rosés that are here on the table, this wine should be served at just under room temperature, a little bit cool. Put it in the fridge for about 20 minutes. If you've had it sitting out, between 60 and 65 degrees is a good temp. That's just enough that it's not warm and it's not cold. It's just got a nice vibe to it. You should decant it. Any red wine, you should. You don't have to. If you're just in a hurry, you want to knock it back, go for it. But if you're getting ready to have it with a good meal, give it about 30 minutes in a decanter, or just like I did here, put it in your glass and let it sit there. And this serves as a decanter itself anyway. The prices range. The least expensive Grenache you'll probably find can be as low as $10 or $12. And then you can find Grenache, and then Grenache blends, the sky's the limit. I mean, they go in some very fine wines, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. The wines age about 5 to 10 years, the single varietal. When they get into blends, they even have the possibility to age for a couple decades, and I'll talk about those in a minute as well. So the different styles of the wine that Grenache comes in is very important. There's a red Grenache. They don't call it red Grenache, but it can be made into a rosé, which, if you remember my talks about rosés, you're just bleeding off the juice, but you give minimal skin contact and it makes it beautiful. This is I'll talk about this in a minute. I'm thirsty. So as I said, the different styles that you can get, it's generally a still wine. The single varietals in Spain, I don't want to say they don't blend it at all, but they really don't blend it much. You can always blend Grenache. It's a great blending grape, but you get that Garnacha from Spain. And that would be my advice to you, before I forget to say it. If you decide that from what I've shared with you, or you just on your own decide you want to try a Garnacha, I would start with one from Spain. They are very expressive, they're fruity, they're big and bold. So like if you like Zinfandel, it's very, I don't want to say it's comparable, but it's just got big, it can have big fruit. It can be very mild too, depending on the style that it was made in. The blends of Garnacha and Grenache are very prominent. I'm going to talk about them as we go through these bottles, but I'll highlight it now. In wine parlance, they call them GSM, the initials wines: Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre, and they may be future grapes. Remember those from one of our chats. But Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre grapes are also known as CDR, Côte du Rhône, from the Rhône region styles of wine. They do them in California. Those three grapes blend fantastically. It's quintessential Rhône style red wines, and they are just fabulous, fabulous wines. So if you don't want to do just a Grenache, the quickest, a secondary way to break in besides a Spanish Garnacha is to go find in your wine shop a good Côte du Rhône. I'll show you, it'll say it right on the bottle. And if you can read the label, I taught you how to read the label, maybe it'll tell you that it's a nice Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre blend. And the concentrations of those grapes in there, it's usually primarily Grenache, and then the Syrah and the Mourvèdre add different characteristics to the wine. So, and then of course, Grenache makes a fantastic rosé. It's generally not a rosé of Grenache alone, although I have seen them. Grenache can be kind of weak if you don't do it right, so to add the other grapes to it gives it that little bit of body, a little bit of volume, a little bit of extra kick on the palate when you blend it with other good red grapes. Some places even throw some white, and depending on they might put some Vermentino in to make a Grenache rosé blend. There is a white version. I'm not going to talk about that today. It's kind of scarce. You don't see it much, but I will tell you, if you happen to come across a Grenache Blanc, it's very, very good. It's a Rhône style. They put it in Rhône style blends, white Rhône style blends. And I'm not here to talk about that particular branch of Grenache today. And it also comes in a sparkling. I have a winery in California that I love to shop at called Bonnie Doon that has done a fantastic Grenache sparkling rosé. It is, it's actually very, very, very good. So let's put all of that aside. Those are your facts about the grape Grenache, a long-standing grape in the wine world, centuries. So we're talking about a classic varietal here. I'm going to set the rosé aside, and we're now going to move to the red. Well, let's stay with the rosé. Let's do the rosé first, since I have this in the glass. This first one is a Bandol. A Bandol rosé is generally Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, Carignan. They may put up to 5 or 6 grapes in it. This one is a 2023, and it's a 14% alcohol by volume rosé. So that's bigger than a white wine and bigger than some red wines. So this rosé is probably going to go very well with some kind of food that I'm going to have later. I'll talk about that another time. But it pairs well with a host of rosés. Just pair well with just about everything as far as I'm concerned. We'll talk about the red pairings in a minute. So the other rosé that I have on the table is one from Bonnie Doon, and this one I know. This one goes for $20. This is an $18 bottle. They call it Vin Gris, which means they bleed it off, and it is a blend of the same Rhone style grapes. This is basically a Grenache-based rosé. So that's it for the rosés for now. So let's go to the reds. Let's start with the one that I opened for you. This one's called Lo Brujo. It is from Catalayud. Catalayud is a city in the province of Aragon. As I said, this wine originates from Aragon. This is a 16 bottle of, it's 100% Garnacha. It's a 2018. So if you remember what I just said, these wines can age about 10 years, maybe even more. So this one is in its prime. And you see here, you can't see it, but you can tell when a wine is getting near its end. These red wines turned almost to a little bit of a brick color. You see a light hue around the rim of the glass. It's hard to convey that here on the camera, but let me, herbal notes. It's got some leather on it. Let me take a sip of this. Red wines are just to be savored. The tannins are, Grenache can be tannic. This needs a little bit more air. I only had it open about half an hour, but the flavors on here are absolutely enormous. Very, very good. So, and that's only a $16 bottle of Garnacha. So now let me go around the world here. I'm going to start, first of all, overseas, and then we'll come back to California. So the next one that I want to feature, or the next two, the first one is, if you remember I said you look for a Côte du Rhône. This Guigal company is very good. Guigal, excuse me. And they don't tell you much on the back of a bottle of French wine. This is an $18 bottle. But you know, if you remember, if you know your grapes and you know your wines, the minute you see this is Côte du Rhône, you know this is probably your 50 or 60% Grenache. It's French, so I'll say it the French way. Grenache grape is in this bottle. It's probably a different blend of Syrah and Mourvedre depending on the harvest that year. So this wine has Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre in it, and I'm going to tell you, I've had one. It's fantastic. And this one goes for $18. So there you go. Côte du Rhône. Yep, 2020. So this one could hold this one for a couple more years. So let's get that one out of the way. Now this next one is a very special wine. This is called Chateau Neuf du Pape, Newcastle of the Pope. And this is a classic. It's always got an emblem on the bottle. These can run, you can spend hundreds of dollars for these. Doc G always finds the bargain, so to speak. Chateau Neuf du Papes, and that means it's maybe under 50. You're not going to get one of these for 12 bucks. If you do, walk away from it because it's either a lie or it's bad. So a Chateau Neuf du Pape can have up to in excess of 10 different grapes in it, but it definitely has to have some Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvedre in it. And then all these other little plots of grapes that they grow in the Rhone Valley that make up a Chateau Neuf du Pape. This one is age-worthy. They all are very age-worthy. And this one is a 2019. I don't have to drink this one yet. I might, not today, but I don't have to drink this one yet. That's the nice thing. You lay it on its side, let that wine seal in the cork, and you're in business. So this one, actually, they tell you on this one, which is not something you see, this one's 55% Grenache and 45% Syrah. And then there are probably some other grapes in here that they don't even mention. It's 15.5% alcohol by volume. That's a bomb. That's a big ass wine. So they give a little description of it again, tell you that it's from 70-year-old vines done in clay and limestone. And they tell you exactly where it's from. Aromas of Provençal herbs and pepper, and a trademark strong fruit profile fold into sensual tannins and carry all the way to a long finish. If you want to treat yourself sometime, this is on par. This is like the French Barolo or the French Bordeaux. This is a classic wine, a Chateau Neuf du Pape, bone dry, bone dry, but they are very, very good. So that's France. So now let's move to California. I recently visited Paso Robles. It's an area famous. Central California is probably the Côte du Rhône of California. So I have three here. I'm just going to run through them very quickly. This one's from Vina Robles. It's a 2022. It's probably not even ready to drink yet. This was a $50 bottle of wine. So I'm going to take care of this baby and make sure that it gets treated very well. So that's from Vina Robles. Then I have another one of my favorite wineries that we visited when we were out there, Tablas Creek. Now this doesn't have only Grenache in it. That one from Vina Robles is 100% Grenache. This one is like a Côte du Rhône blend, and this was 2022. So this is not ready yet either. I could drink it if I wanted to. But this one has 44% Grenache, 33% Syrah, 19% Counoise, which is another Southern Rhone grape, and 4% Mourvedre. So I've had this. This is this is fantastic. I don't know if I had this vintage, but this comes from the Adelaida district in Paso Robles, and they've got some words on here, but it's a $36 bottle, which is not so bad. Tablas Creek is a very good vineyard. And finally, I'll finish with one of my favorite wineries from Central California, Bonnie Doon. This is a little bit more of a value Côte du Rhône style. It's called Vin Gris, or the Cigar Volant. And that's a whole nother story about the Grenache or the Cigar Volant. I'll save that since this is running a little bit long. But this is 61% Grenache, 20% Syrah, 15% Sanso, and 4% of a grape called Petit Syrah. And it's a medium body, and it's only 13.5. Now, you remember I said that Chateau Neuf du Pape was 15.5. Trust me, that extra 2% of ABV makes a difference. So there you have it, gang. Go find yourself a nice Grenache. That'll be our grape of February 2025. So I hope you have a chance to enjoy one. If you don't like the reds, try a rosé. Maybe you'll get lucky and you'll even find a Grenache Blanc. So until then, let me take a sip again here, see how this one's holding up. It's getting better. The longer our red wine sits out within a certain time frame, the better it gets. So until then, my friends, stay warm, and I'll see you next month with a new cocktail, with a new wine of the month, and with whatever else crosses my mind. Cheers, and stay safe.